I'll give you a viewer warning here. This documentary is not meant for children. Even though it's the only one on this channel, this is actually the second part to a docu-series that I'm making called Corrupt Rust. It talks about the pedophilia in Hollywood and the political system. It's not meant for viewer watching for minors unless you as a parent decide consensually to use it as educational programming to teach them.
Now remember, he was president from 1993 to SA. I can't say it on YouTube, but for a discussion about it. I'm just gonna find the news report. Okay, let's go ahead. It says that a dormitory matron accused of incident assault on pupils at Oprah Winfrey School in South Africa for disadvantaged girls. And then, as she leaves the magistrate court south of Johannesburg in South Africa on November 5th, 2007, not 2011, excuse me, the dormitory, so this was the year the school opened, 2007. The dormitory matron accused of incident assault on pupils at Oprah Winfrey School for disadvantaged girls was freed on bail. Virginia Makopo, 27, faces 13 charges of indecent assault and criminal injury committed against 6 students, ages 13 to 15, and a 23-year-old at the school. So the first year of the school, that's what happened. But the thing about it is, right after that, there was also another incident that happened. And the common denominator of this is the lack of leadership at the school, to where the young girls are put in vulnerable situations that they have to, it seems as though they're like finding resources on their own and not being fully supported. So the next one, a student at the school actually brought a newborn baby in their bag, and the student was found in the bag. The next incident is a student. There was a dead newborn found in a student's bag. And this one was so heartbreaking because there's clearly some things going on at home. There's clearly some things going on at the school where the student did not feel like she could have disclosed this information to anyone. But there was a newborn baby found. And the news report says that on February 11th, 2011, so this is a couple years after the first incident of students being sexually assaulted.
4 years.
Oprah Winfrey School for Girls in South Africa is being rocked by a fresh scandal. An investigation of a baby of a newborn found in one of the students' bag. The baby's body was found last Wednesday in the bag of a 17-year-old girl brought to the hospital where she was being treated for excessive bleeding. So she...
So one of the hardest things I've found about making this portion of this docu-series is, like with Tom Hanks, he wasn't so difficult. There were a lot of things he associated with when it came to acting or paying jobs, or we call it acting, but really it's just exposing entertainment. A lot of people tend to think that just because it's on TV that it's fake or it has good intent because it had some sort of theme and it got past censors and yada yada. And a lot of people say, well, there's a lot of shit that you can't get away with. Yeah, you can't get away with these days like you could back in the 90s or the 70s or hell, even the 60s. And they think, well, just because it's on TV and it has a certain face to it or has a certain person to it, that it's all fake material. But when it came to Tom Hanks, he was kind of easy to pinpoint because even if it was advertised on a comedy show or it wasn't, when he did that little show or episode skit, whatever it was, called My Sexy Baby about pageants. First of all, I have a heavy, I shouldn't say I have a heavy, because that makes it seem like this whole project is opinionated. And regardless of how you approach something like this, to an extent they always are, but you gotta found your opinions or the facts based upon the reality that's presented or not presented that you have to find. But I think there's a heavy issue with pageants anyway, trying to display children and people like there's some sort of item in a JCPenney catalog, or something on display while window shopping, that kind of thing. And especially doing that with children, it's to the extent it's gone way too far, and it's disgusting. When he was doing things like that, and being a co-citizen of Greece, I covered in the Tom Hanks portion an issue with there is with the Greek viewpoints on pedophilia. They treat it more like a mental disability, and they give you a check every month instead of putting you in jail or the death penalty or anything like that. So when it came to certain media display that had him interacting in certain ways that displayed predatory behavior, he wasn't as hard to find. But whenever it comes to Oprah, obviously the girls' school is an issue. There was very little that was taken accounted for when it actually came to that. Sure, there was some legal interaction, but there was very little that was actually done, as far as I'm concerned. There's not so much on display, though there is material on display that either Oprah herself is borderline or straight up admitting that she's a pedophile, or has had any sort of interaction with hiring or pimping out children, that she has done anything to interact. But she, even if that's not available, has been displayed to extent that she is an enabler. That she does interact with rapists. She interacted with Harvey Weinstein. She was claimed to be good friends with him on a daily basis, on a regular basis. She interacted with that spiritual guru, a spiritual teacher, who was, some of the interactions that came up about him, obviously that was problematic. Now, I do have a hunch that whenever it came to Maui, Hawaii, it was catching all fires, but, he had all these billionaire shorefront homes that didn't burn down, but all the working class people, the everyday folk, like you and me, their homes all burnt down. That was all, as far as I'm concerned, a real estate endeavor to kick out the natives and bring in more billionaire class. And Oprah and The Rock were the first to jump on that shit, make a commercial about, hey, donate money, donate money. Oprah's a billionaire. She's the wealthiest, at that time, she was the wealthiest woman in the country of color, if not in general. Now, The Rock, he's not worth as much as Oprah, obviously, but they both had plenty of enough money to spare to help any sort of rebuild. But if they had directly rebuilt, or even if it had been donation based, it would have been according to their standards, and it would have been this billionaire, upper class millionaire society. As far as I see it, with some of Oprah's connections, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if she were to pull like a Maxwell and be like, well, I got these opportunities for your children, and it'll help the family make money, and then start pimping out the children to these rich pedophiles that are running around the island. We all know how upset social media got, especially TikTok, in the certain vibe that they had, the sector they had for these rich people to ask for people's donations. You know, there's people that want to donate, did donate, but you shouldn't be doing it through some billionaire outlet. You should find organizations that are still able to run, that are actually on the island, and donate to them and let them rebuild. Go there and help yourself, hands on. Sorry, I had a spam caller. You get a lot of those lately. But never fund the refinance or rebuild system that's offered through a billionaire outlet. If they gave a genuine care, if they genuinely cared about what was going on with the island, they would be donating their own money also. And they would be like, if they really care, they would make a, maybe make a commercial, but say, hey, here are some organizations that we found that are already on the island. Show proof that they are independent from, say, Oprah or The Rock. Own small grassroots, genuine grassroots, not billionaire funded or created, presenting itself as grassroots, but genuine grassroots from the locals. Present that and let you donate to them. It shouldn't be an outlet through a billionaire class. They're gonna accept that money as charity, as donation, for a tax write-off, and then rebuild everything to their own interest. That's exactly what's going to happen. And I believe that Oprah, and I wouldn't be surprised if Oprah was finding a way to traffic these kids through a false cause to help the families rebuild. Whenever that happened. It's kind of hard to find any direct link to that on the public surface. I mean, if there's anything that actually happened with that, you would have to dig and dig and dig, and that's what I'm going to be working on. Digging. Billionaires should not be accepting your money. Oprah is a difficult person to find any real information on, besides some acquaintance that she had with somebody else at one point. And she can go on her daily talk show, web show, whatever it is now, and say all day that these things are disgusting. I should have never involved with them, but some of the people that she's had interactions with that she shouldn't have had interactions with, I wouldn't be surprised if she's still having interactions with them. I'm going to be, at one point I had originally downloaded Reddit to try to find out information like this, because Reddit's one of those places that there are many things about it I despise, but it seems like the sort of place that you should be able to find certain information when it comes to these sort of issues. But one thing I'm going to do is I think I'm going to backtrack off of Reddit. I'm going to delete my account, uninstall it, because when I try to look up stuff in regards to sex rings, pedophile rings, sexual abuse that's related to Oprah, you get a lot of right-wing extremists who aren't really saying anything. They're just kind of, we feel like we should hate Oprah, so here's a post about hating Oprah. And it's not always the right reasons on why they're hating Oprah. And here I'm going to share a couple screen recordings, at least one, that I got in regards to this. Just show you an example. I'm not a left-wing extremist either. I believe the right wing and the left wing are both anatomy on the same dead bird that's lying bloated on the middle of a Mississippi highway. in the middle of a September heat drought. So I'll show some of that to you now, and then we're going to get on with this documentary. Now, in these screen recordings here, there's going to be about, let's see here, start at about 15:07, ends about 22.5. So it's going to be about 7.5 minutes of screen recording, which I found a couple years ago when I got this phone and realized it had it, a highly convenient aspect when it came to making documentaries of any form or fashion. Came across these. Unfortunately, I screen recorded them on Reddit, and some of y'all may think, well, that's not a huge deal. There's a huge community aspect to that. And to an extent, that is a good thing about Reddit. There's a large community platform on there when it comes to various dialects and getting information. But also there's an alternative side to Reddit, which I don't really like. There's a high, what I like to call bust a nut mindset behind it, which I know is extremely unprofessional when it comes to making this documentary, but it's the truth about it. There is a huge mindset behind that, a huge pornographic side of it. It's pretty much what people wanted to keep Tumblr. People on Tumblr try to get away with the whole, but it's art aspect of it, but eventually the kind of pornographic side of it gets banned. And I know sex trade in various forms is the highest or the oldest form of business in human culture, but I think the obsession of it, just like the love of power of money, I think the obsession with the convenience of pornography is part of the downfall of the human psyche. And but I had gone to Reddit to get some of these screen recordings, and as you can see on here, it's so much on surface level of obsession of Oprah being, and the sex trade being, like I believe I mentioned before, right-wing extremists who are just as problematic as left-wing extremists, being like, well, they have this presentation of it being uneducated and lacking proper research, and pretty much what it boils down to, as much to an extent that I hate to say it, they're saying, well, she's black and sex is a sin. Unless you're married to the person you're going to have sex with, then it needs to be godly. And though pedophilia is obviously much more of an issue socially, this behavior in itself also is problematic. They want to get on here and act passionate about being anti-something, but I think with them, it's more about Oprah being black than it is the fact that she might be involved with pedophile rings or have associated with people who are pedophiles, etc., etc. That's their major mindset, and that's a downfall. But unfortunately, on surface level, they're also the ones that make up a majority of these posts and articles and etc., etc. And for those of them who are not claiming openly to support right-wing idealism, a lot of them are posting in the sense of, it's a conspiracy just for the sake of being edgy socially and confusing the idea of pretending to be a poster child conspiracy theorist is the same as sharing the truth. And that in itself is an issue also. So when you go to certain sites that might have an alternative to actually finding anything legit, you got these people who aren't really providing anything. They're not providing anything, so it's like you have to dig around, find other sources. And what the kind of money that Oprah has, she does that shit more out of power, clearing her name on social media, as opposed to somebody like Elon Musk, who has been involved with hanging out with Elon Maxwell and Epstein. They do it more out of panic and fear, which it should be known that they've spent time with them and knew what was going on. But they weren't focusing on how to actually handle their business. He was doing it more out of panic and fear, and that's why I think archive work is important. You find photos of these people hanging out with different people and continuing to do so even after accusations have been made. Archive work and documentation is an extremely important thing, and that's part of why I'm making these docu-series. But Reddit is kind of a hit or miss on finding any sort of real leads. I haven't used it for anything in a long time, or at least a little while. Type this in on YouTube. I typed it in like that because sometimes you can go on particular sites and it'll pull up, you can type in the full word of pedophile on certain sites. And this happened to me recently on YouTube. I typed in the word pedophile in association with a celebrity and it said, "Whoa, hold your horses," I had one of those kind of warning stops, like you can't be looking up this word, you can't be looking up this phrase, etc. on this site. And I think it was with Oprah. Actually, this was a couple weeks ago. And it might have been Tumblr, actually. Tumblr's getting kind of hit or miss. I got off Tumblr for a while because I kind of saw them as a bullshit site. They still, for the most part, are. You used to be able to go on there, and it actually used to be a pretty active blog site. Now it's now it's pretty much a mix of two things. Either you're an artist or some sort of, for lack of a better term, a watered down poet doing work on there, or you're kind of a schizophrenic, psychosis based kind of fan fiction writer. Came on here, and so far it's sites like videos like this. You used to be able to go on here and type in Oprah having a
tweets. Just got a phone call that my neighbors
have some form or another of a search around Oprah having affiliation with pedophilia or sex rings. And, it used to have a huge mixture of things that came up in the search bar. Hundreds and hundreds or thousands of videos from everything from like E! News, like that's in this video right here, to conspiracy right-wingers, and really just everything in between and on either side of those kind of categories. And now when you get on here, for the most part it'll be short videos like this, like with clickbaity titles like that. Seal calls Oprah Winfrey part of the problem over sexual, and of course that's only part of the title, but you have this whole clickbaity type title going on. That's pretty much the article, but they're making it the title of the video. And it sees, for the most part, titles like that will be these half-assed journalism accounts trying to act like they're, really promoting news or groundbreaking ideals. But they'll be jumping on bandwagon trains for views. But now, for the most part, because I've done multiple searches on YouTube, kind of dives and basic skims, and you have a lot of stuff like this, that, like the Oprah OWN, which is the Oprah Winfrey Network, their own YouTube channel, will be short clips by the Oprah Winfrey Network. Doing interviews with people who are, sexual abuse victims, or they, they were molested as minors, as children. Videos with titles that are talking about, from her own network, saying, things like Oprah discusses, or Oprah explains, the sexual abuse train among minors and youth, and acting like she's so far against it, disclaiming her friendship with Harvey Weinstein. You can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, but and YouTube is not the extent in which you need to be like maxing out your search on celebrity figures doing this sort of thing, because a lot of people in the entertainment industry, whether it be these big name YouTube or Instagram or Twitch streamers, or it's people that are actually involved in Hollywood, are all involved in it as just as much as these politicians are, both in our country and otherwise. That involves Britain, England, certain Middle Eastern countries. I'm sure that every country that has a major political figure in it has had somebody, or currently has somebody, that's involved in hiring out pimped children. And every now and then, especially when it comes to YouTube or these surface level videos, most of the time, as kind of shitty as it is, the most truth you'll get about the situations are these like comedian videos. Like you got one here that's Dane Cook. Dane Cook's not really a good comedian, at least in my opinion, but you get situations like that where you're probably going to get more truth out of those than you are from, bullshit journalism accounts such as Entertainment Tonight or the Oprah Winfrey Network. But of course, Oprah, she's got, the sad part about it is, that Oprah has so much money. She can buy out basically any media outlet she wants to cover up or hide out any involvement she has. With these kind of events. And it's really pathetic. It really is pathetic. And disgusting. And the most truth you're going to get is out of independent journalists and investigations. Let's watch this real quick. Let's see what's going on here. Let me make sure this is an old video, but
Hardee's heart-shaped biscuits, made from scratch with extra love for an extra.
I actually went to Hardee's a few days ago and got a
February 16th.
chicken, egg, and cheese biscuit, and they were heart-shaped.
Elijah Wood's shocking allegations against the entertainment industry. In a new interview with the Sunday Times, the former child star alleges that pedophilia has been a real issue in Hollywood. He tells the publication, quote, "There are a lot of vipers in this industry, people who only have their own interests in mind. What bums me about these situations is that the victims can't speak as loudly as the people in power. That's the tragedy of attempting to reveal what is happening to innocent people. They can be squashed, but their lives have been irreparably damaged." The 35-year-old adds, "If you're innocent, you have very little knowledge of the world and you want to succeed. People with parasitic interests will see you as their prey."
I can get a good career doing this. It's gonna be good.
Wood says he was not a victim of abuse because his mother Deborah protected him and he avoided those kinds of situations. He goes on to allege that even as an adult in the industry, he has been, quote, "led down dark paths to realize that these things probably are still happening."
They're definitely still happening. Entertainment Tonight's not really a extremely reliable source to go through. They're a highly watered down source, the way I see it. They'll cover the basic watered down version of serious topics for a little bit, but they don't, like most mainstream media outlets, especially these especially media outlets that are made for these, that do some news, but are made for these celebrity, cults, as I call them. These people who, are real heavy into celebrity worship and, pretending like these celebrities are one of them or could do no wrong. That's kind of entertainment for them, and they kind of talk about the issues involved, but a little bit, but then they keep you coming back. Okay, we'll disband from this one celebrity or another, but then they'll keep you coming back to keep, Hollywood earning money. Basically, it's a Hollywood sub-media outlet, one that's made to look like it's for the small folks, but keeping update with celebrities, which is disgusting. This is from the, actually the first episode of Corrupt Rust I did was about Tom Hanks. But it's him, it's a 3.5 minute video here, him talking about Weinstein, the Weinstein scandal. Let's see what kind of bullshit talk he has about that.
I think there was knowledge amongst a certain group.
The news in your industry these days is not about a great new film, it's about Harvey Weinstein.
Right, yeah.
A lot of talk about everybody knew, or the behavior was an open secret. Did you know? I mean, did people know about this?
I think there was knowledge amongst a certain group of people, mostly who did business with Harvey Weinstein. Mm-hmm. I think in an awful lot of the dialogue that I've read that come out, there are countless women who understood that that's what happened, and there were many people who said, well, that's just Harvey being Harvey.
Well, that's the question. Is it how serious is it? Is it about one person, one man, or is it a culture?
You and I, and even the likes of the people on the Turner Classic movies, constantly understand that the idea of the casting couch that existed in Hollywood is the part of both myth and concrete reality. The idea that there are sexual predators in power, not just in Hollywood, I think all across any place there's a boss with underlings in any corporation or any industry, you have a type of sexual politics that goes on that can slide in between appropriate ethics and decorum to, let's see, inappropriate behavior to the point of harassment and sexual predatory behavior.
Well, I mean, I think people understand that, but the larger
And Hanks
question is
has
there
been a serious part of it,
complicity in
trying to play it off as a
where
joke.
women are afraid to speak up because they'll be blacklisted. Men are afraid to speak up because either they're out of the same fear or they just think, well, this is the way the system works.
I think there are people that say, hey, this is how it works, pure and simple. And this is why I got into it. This is why I have power. This is how it works, and you have to understand that. That does not carry the day. Complicity is also complicity. The people who know, well, look, this is how we do business, and that's what it's got to be done. I'm sorry it's like that. So beware. That's also present, without a doubt, but it does not carry the day. There's also people that were afraid to speak out, who were victims, that did not go forward, that signed negotiated settlement deals of which a non-disclosure agreement was part and parcel to it. That also does not carry the day. The dam has burst here in a big way, and it is not just the halls of places like Harvey Weinstein's office where this was standard operating procedure. And it is criminal, and it is cause for termination. It's also happening in every other corner of not just my industry, but yours and throughout all of America.
Do you think this is a kind of tipping point?
Well, I think it absolutely is, in which everybody is asking, men and women, women, what do I put up with, and when do I talk about? And men saying, I think we have to live by a code of ethics that we need to think and put down on paper. Don't be surprised if there's going to be a sign in front of every one of the studio gates that will say all people entering this studio will obey this code of ethics, or they will be escorted from the premises. And that will all be about sexual harassment and sexual predatory behavior.
I was on the a PBS NewsHour production, and this was put on their YouTube account for the PBS NewsHour company 7 years ago. Let me show you here. 7 years ago, 3.1 million views in the past 7 years in that video. The pathetic part about it is, when it comes to Tom Hanks, he actually got a dual citizenship in Greece, and I talked about this in the episode of Corrupt Russ I made about him, in which I may make a part 2 in regards to him. But I made the first episode I made, the first segment I made was about him. And I did some screen recording. There was probably about 8 minutes in there of screen recording, where I did, I was looking up some of the laws about Greece, in which he has a dual citizenship. And in Greece, I don't know how recently some laws have changed, but as of 2023, the laws were still the same when I made that segment. Pedophilia was not seen as an abomination or a crime. It was seen more of a, you got caught having sex with a minor, an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, that regards, it wasn't seen as a crime or an abomination that it is. It was seen as a mental disability. Pretty much they would get, pedophiles would get a slap on the wrist, they get sort of a warning, and then they would get a legitimate, these people would become registered that they have this, as Greece calls it, a mental disability, and they would get a government payout every month, a disability check for being a pedophile. And I looked it up, they would get higher disability payouts than people who would, let's say that somebody fought in a war, somebody was in a car accident and they had to have the leg amputated and they couldn't go to work, or they had to have a very restrictive job where they could only work so many hours a week, or could not work at all, and they had to rely on government assistance or government income as their income through disability. These pedophiles would get a higher disability payout than, let's say, somebody who, or was a paraplegic, or, you know, literally anything else, or they were wheelchair bound, couldn't walk, they were legitimately mentally disabled, physically disabled, etc., etc. They, for the most part, they would get lower government disability checks and payouts than pedophiles in their culture. And when I screen recorded that and put that into the Tom Hanks
get them alone?
Segment, that was 2023, late summer. That was like late July, August, and of 2023. And the laws in regards to that were still the same as that. And those laws had really started to take an effect in like the 2008 to 2012 area. Regardless of what Greek citizens actually felt about it, that's what their government classified being a pedophile as. And that's how their government was dealing with pedophilia. Which in itself is an abomination and just outright fucking disgusting. It's pathetic. In Germany, places like Germany, there's a lot of European countries too that have that kind of viewpoint, but especially with places like Germany. Depending on what part of the country you're in, is anywhere from 12 to 14. You'll let that sink in a little bit as you need to. I don't know why we have Lord and Savior, the expert of the world, Joe Rogan, on here talking about this shit, but I hope you understand I mean that sarcastically. On a rare occasion, I'll put Joe Rogan on as background noise or when I'm falling asleep just for sound, but I think it's kind of hard to take this guy seriously with half the stuff he talks about. Or it's not so much what him and his guests talk about on his podcast, it's just how they go about it. Because 9 times out of 10 it always turns into a discourse about, man, we were fucking monkeys, you know, and doing shrooms, and aliens came down and fucked a mushroom and turned into a DMT particle, and that's how humanity got to be how it is, man. You know what I'm talking about? You ever smoked a cigar from the Cuban underlords of fucking, where they mixed it with the blood of the German elites and blah 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 blah. It's just always the same discourse of bullshit. But let's keep going on. So one of the biggest issues I see, in addition to the actual trafficking of minors, is what politicians are conjuring up on these mainstream media sites, these mainstream news sites, about there being a ton of criminals coming into the country illegally or legally through immigration customs. Just like in every culture, whether it's you want to consider America or white America or China or Cuba or any country, has their level of crime that happens, their level of bad people. It doesn't matter if it's America, it doesn't matter what country, continent, any sort of separating landmass that has a culture in it, you consider it all has their crime wave. Now, one of the main issues I've heard be promoted, both through mainstream media and through the mouth and mindset of a lot of people, is that there's a lot of pedophiles coming through into our country from other countries. Now listen, I'm sure there's a minute position, a minute percentage of people that come into our country that either have had pedophile charges or are pedophiles. But the fact that there's such a mindset of this towards a majority of them coming in to our country, I think goes to show how many of the people that are in the mainstream media circuit, or the people that pay them, being the politicians, or they paying the politicians, and they agree, okay, this is going to be the distraction. There may be a percentage of them from any country, continent, etc., that might be pedophiles. But the fact that this is such a mental stir in regards to that is in part to distract you from the fact that there are so many of them with power in our own political and media system. Truly believe that. And part of the reason I'm saying that is because I see it that way. But also, while I was going through that Reddit phase of trying to do research, I found a list of politicians, both past and current, that had been associating with minors. A lot of them Democrat, a lot of them Republican. Remember correctly, there might have been a couple independents mixed in there, but you would be amazed with how many were either Democrat or Republican. And it's not a big scale in one direction or the other either. It's quite a bit of both. And I took a screen recording of the list. There's a couple parts where I skimmed through it kind of briefly. But I've got almost 10 minutes of screen recording that is on my computer that I'm going to throw into this documentary now. And I want you to review it. And I want you to look at it. There's going to be about 9.5, 10 minutes of silence, quiet. But I want you to look at that now. believe another issue that kind of feeds into this is this country's obsession with, I mean, I've seen it firsthand. There is a general social obsession with pornography. I used to have a problem with it myself in my younger adulthood. Not so much particular categories. For myself, I always enjoyed the ones that involved like women that are a little bit older than me, but like in their 40s. But there is a general popularity and obsession with the idea of young and petite in pornography. 18-year-old gets pounded, 19-year-old gets seduced by stepbrothers, shit like that. Pretty much glamorizing the revolvement around fresh out of adolescence, discovering her womanhood, that kind of shit. There is an obsession among the general population based out of sexual and emotional immaturity. And for those who find sexual gratification out of those who are younger than that, they are fucking abominations. They are abominations. People are addicted to artificial orgasms, artificial gratification. And there needs to be an adjustment away from that. This country is heading towards that in other areas as well. All this AI, doing AI girlfriends, doing these robotic programs that companies have already started to invest in or will invest in more heavily to either pay less to actual people or be more efficient. Really, for the most part, the people that they will have to pay for this shit will be people to maintain these robots, these AI programs. And then the people who run the company, those will be the only ones really having any sort of employment with that. And I think that's the way society is going. You got a large percentage of the population who claims they don't want it, but this country is going to have a downfall more than it already has out of instant artificial gratification, completion. And that's part of the influence towards this obsession of something that's more or less a basic human need. But a lot of people take this too far with the whole petite and young, petite and young, petite and young. Fresh out of high school mindset. That's a mindset that these politicians and these Holly weirdos have. They have the money and the power, so they think they can get away with having them young or underage. It's an abomination to us as a species, the general aspect of morality, and eventually us as a country. We need to have a more severe punishment for those who have been active in pedophilia. But to the extent that it is, for the most part, people who do that punishment are those who are already in jail or prison and they ain't got nothing to lose. Or people who will end up in jail or prison for doing what seems to need to be done. A lot of people agree needs to be done. I don't care how much money or power you have or you think you have. We don't protect pedophiles. It's a goddamn abomination. Whether you look at it from a religious standpoint or not, it's a goddamn abomination. Those people who regularly involve themselves with it do not, at the very early stages of this, in all aspect, you do not deserve gratification. In any form or fashion. You are an abomination. I'm not making a threat, but I may be making a promise.
Would you raise your hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you please state your full name?
I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands.
Do you maintain any other residences presently?
I have vacation homes in New Mexico, Palm Beach, New York, and Paris.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
What was the crime of which you were convicted?
Two counts. One, soliciting prostitution and procuring a minor for prostitution.
Did you in fact commit those acts?
I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
How many times have you solicited a minor for prostitution?
Same answer.
How many times have you solicited a minor for prostitution in the state of Florida?
Same answer.
Have you ever solicited a minor for prostitution in the Virgin Islands?
Same answer.
That is, you are invoking your Fifth Amendment,
yes, sir.
right?
Yes, Mr. Squirrel.
Have you ever solicited for prostitution in New York?
Same answer.
Have you ever solicited for prostitution in New Mexico?
Same answer.
Have you ever solicited for prostitution in Paris?
Same answer.
Have you ever solicited a minor for prostitution anywhere at any time?
Again, I'm going to assert my right.
Let's take another break.
We're going to go off the record.
So you are terminating the deposition at this time?
The recess of the deposition.
What college did you attend?
Cooper Union.
And did you get a degree from Cooper Union?
No, sir.
How many years were you in college?
I believe 2.
What'd you study?
Physics.
Well, isn't it true that you were a teacher at the Dalton School in New York after college? It's just unheard of. It's just an unbelievable scheme to have kept going for that long of a period of time. Do you consider yourself to be bisexual?
No.
Okay. In any event, you did develop a sexual relationship with Leslie Wexner at some point in time. Is that true?
No.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection. Harassing. Argumentative. Are you kidding?
I mean, I don't feel like I'm divulging any secrets here, right?
Move to strike.
Mr. Epstein, were you sexually abused as a minor?
Right. Again?
Were you sexually abused as a minor?
You know, I'd like to respond to all your, if any, questions seem to be relevant, but I would like to respond to any relevant question at this time. However, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to the questions relevant to this lawsuit today. I must accept their advice or risk losing my Sixth Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, then, I assert my Fifth, Sixth, and 14th Amendment right to the United States Constitution.
Would you raise your right hand, please?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Is it true, sir, that you have what's been described as an egg-shaped penis? I had hired a psychologist to do a psychological profile on Jeffrey Epstein, what type of person he was, and what would actually get under his skin. What made him tick was that he was a narcissist. He had no ability to feel empathy and saw himself as the master of puppets, so to speak. Sir, one witness described your penis as oval-shaped and claimed when erect it was thick towards the bottom but was thin and small towards the head portion and called it egg-shaped. Those are not my words, I apologize. But as Mr. Critton has stated, that this is a... I'm willing to continue. I hate to call him back.
Let me go on the record.
He tries at all times to be the master of his domain and in control of his world. As soon as he feels he's out of control, it's unsettling to him.
Complaint filed by Virginia Roberts against you. Isn't it true, sir, that a friend of yours sent you 3 12-year-old females for you to sexually abuse on one of your birthdays?
Form argumentative, harassing, and irrelevant to this lawsuit.
But you're saying it's part of the lawsuit?
Yeah, I'll read it directly.
It was Jeffrey's birthday one.
On one of defendant Epstein's birthdays, a friend of defendant Epstein sent him 3 12-year-old girls from France who spoke no English for defendant to sexually exploit and abuse. After doing so, they were sent back to France the next day. Isn't that true?
Once again, I'm going to move to strike. Irrelevant, argumentative, harassing.
I would like to answer that question. I really would. However, today, my attorneys have told me I have to assert my 5th Amendment, 6th Amendment, and 14th Amendment rights of the U.S. Constitution.
You're invoking your 5th Amendment rights to each of these questions because you know that your answers will incriminate you and you feel that it will result in you being prosecuted for these crimes. Isn't that right?
Objection argumentative, harassing, and calls for a legal conclusion.
No, in fact, the Supreme Court recently said that the 5th Amendment right is there to protect the innocent. So that's the way I'd like to answer that.
Are you released from jail at some time? Do you have to report back to jail on a daily basis?
Yes, I report back to jail at 8 p.m.
Every single day?
Yes, sir.
And is it 7 days a week that you're out on work release?
No, sir.
How many days a week are you out on work release?
6.
And of those 6 days, how many hours per day are you out on work release?
12.
We're back on the video record at 12:02 p.m.
Let's talk about Jane Doe 102, Virginia Roberts. Do you know Virginia Roberts?
So she's, again, who?
Virginia Roberts.
Can you spell it?
Common spelling, Virginia, like the state.
Can you spell it for me, please?
Roberts.
How's it, what's the last name? How's it spelled?
Roberts, I believe.
Isn't it true that you and Ghislaine Maxwell celebrated her 16th birthday with her and had sex with her on that day?
Form, compound, confusing, argumentative, and harassing.
I'd like to answer that question. But today, I'm going to have to assert my 6th Amendment rights, my 5th Amendment rights.
Is it true that you forced Virginia Roberts to have sex with numerous friends of yours?
Are you kidding?
Also, all the media that was filmed and shared outside of mine or my work, I want to go ahead and let it know that it be implied that that is their material and all credit goes to them.